snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Foles, touchdown.
Here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown.
Fields stumbling, trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
Hurts on first down, fires downfield. It's Deshaun Jackson back in the lineup. This is the last 7 games, and he will take it 81 yards. A somersault into the end zone. His first touchdown of the season.
You're listening to the Pigskin Project, the world's #1 football podcast. Now, with more insights on all things football, here are your hosts, Ben Hansen and Ryan Matthews.
Ben Hansen and Matt Hartman for you guys this week. I'm sure, as you guys have been aware, big free agency signings since Monday officially opened up this week. But before we get into that, Matt, how you feeling?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about some guys going to new teams at some modest value, at some crazy value, and I think there's some low value guys on this list. If you guys are confused, Ryan is having technical difficulties. Hopefully we get him to join us here shortly. And lastly, before we get into free agency, O-lineman rankings will be dropping Friday. Mine, Ben, and Ryan, we all went and talked about the top 10 linemen overall, not just tackles, interior guys, all of them combined together. So that video will be dropping on Friday. Just wanted to get that out of the way, and let's talk about some guys going to new teams. Let's go, Ben.
Yes, there was a crazy amount of signings, let's say that, and a lot of signings in which we feel some type of way. I mean, we'd be remiss to not start out here with the quarterback position. And the one that it kind of felt like we had mentioned it in the podcast, like as the news was coming out, like, hey, look, maybe the Raiders would trade for Geno. Ha, ha, ha. Wouldn't that be really funny? And then like 2 days after that trade had went through, and it kind of felt like it was always going to be Sam Darnold after that. And sure as heck it was. So let's your thoughts on Sam Darnold. Let's get kicked off with the QBs here.
Yeah, I mean, since the last time we've talked, Geno Smith was traded to the Raiders. DK Metcalf was traded to the Steelers. The Seahawks get 2 day 2 picks for those guys, and it seemed clear that those guys, they didn't view a long-term solution with those guys because I think those guys wanted to be paid at a certain price, and John Snyder decided to make a decision and to send those guys out actively, in the aggregate, making themselves worse when I think we can all agree Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. But at the same time, with the Sam Darnold contract here, 3 years, $100.5 million with about a 55 guarantee. The way I compare this contract is it's very comparable to what Seattle did 2 years ago with Geno, and then last year what the Bucs did with Baker, is that I think everyone kind of in their heads was like, whoever signs Sam Darnold, we're going to point and laugh. I think there was a lot of like Sam Darnold buzz on the timeline when he first signed, and overall, I think they got perfect value on Sam Darnold. I don't know about you, but paying him in the middle tier, they get from Geno to Sam Darnold. Did they get worse from a quarterback perspective? Yes, but not like from, Josh Allen superstar to Sam Darnold, something like that. I think they kind of maneuvered mid-tier quarterbacks, and they got younger in the process. 7 years younger, Sam Darnold. And with the way, there's no structure on Sam Darnold's contract yet, but if I'm comparing it to the Baker Mayfield contract, which is ironic because Baker signed a 3-year, $100 million. So Sam Darnold on paper got $500,000 more in total value, 15 more in total guarantees. But overall, I think that this team, if it goes south with Sam Darnold after 1 year, they should be able to cut him They're going to have to take on dead money, but I think this was the best case scenario for the Seahawks trading away Geno. And, well, we don't want to move to a bridge. We don't want to take one of these rookies that we don't like in the quarterback draft. And so they kind of just decided on Sam Darnold. I don't... when you pay Sam Darnold his perfect value, I don't know how to pick it apart. What are your thoughts?
No, exactly. I think that was the big thing. I think Gino had to have walked into, the GM's office and said, hey, I want more money. And then they had to have looked at his age and said, there is no shot that we are going to pay you high money on a long-term contract at your age at this point. 34? It just was not going to happen. And now trading him and getting Sam Darnold now offers you that flexibility to have your bridge quarterback, but then also take someone within the next, this year, if they're really in love with Jackson Dart, which it's a conversation for another day, or if they want to wait until next year with a better quarterback class that offers them the flexibility as well to take this guy and let him sit behind Sam Darnold if they want, kind of like the Vikings had did with J.J. McCarthy, obviously not within the same scenario, but it allows them that flexibility where they're not fully committed to this guy at the long term, but still have a quarterback for the now while still not giving up the future. So I really do think it was the best of both worlds for this signing. And again, it kind of felt like it was going that way anyways. I liked it, but the other quarterback that had made splash, I guess, signings, we had talked about it. As soon as Sam Darnold had signed with the Seahawks, I was like, well, it seems like Justin Fields is going to be staying with the Steelers. And I mean, right after I had sent that text off, Ryan said, no, I would love for him to go to the Jets. And then 5 minutes later, there you go, 2 years, $40 million. Thoughts on the Justin Fields contract in signing?
It's a lot. Like, I don't want to sit here and say that it's a detrimental amount of money, but 2 years, $40 million for Justin Fields, who all anyone's really analysis on Justin Fields, it's all the same. Well, he has flashes of really good quarterback play, and then the rest happens. So it's one of those things that it's like, this doesn't strike me as a long-term answer, but at the same time, with the quarterback position, I think it's just a way to kind of eat away the dead cap that you just told Aaron Rodgers to just go away. Please just go away. We'll do our own thing. I want nothing to do with you in Aaron Glenn's sense. And I think Justin Fields is just going to be a guy that runs around for a 5-win football team next year. And the way the contract looks structured is that the cap hit is really low in year one, and year two is where the big bumps come. So I think the Jets are in, I think they're thinking, we have a quarterback, and we're going to have a quarterback for the next 2 years through the duration of his deal. I thought it would have been front-loaded. I really do. I really thought they were going to pay the quarterback position with Rodgers' dead money and Fields' front-loaded contract, and we can get out of this next year, just like Seattle. If we want to get a guy next year and Fields runs around and wins 5 games, and we could get a guy. And I think that's still on the table, but just seeing the contract structure is fascinating. And then the $30 million guarantees. 75% of his contract is guaranteed up front, so it's fascinating. Your thoughts?
Yeah, to be honest, it's going to be fun to see him back in the same offense with his guy, Garrett Wilson. And I do think that was the big appeal. There are teams with a guy like this in Justin Fields, a guy that has the potential to be as good as he is. I mean, that's why he was a first-round pick. He's a good runner. He has the ability to be a good passer. I'm not saying he is, but the ability is there. So it is going to be hard for a team to not want to say, we can fix that. Come in the building and we can fix that. And I think that's obviously what the Jets are doing. They said, hey, this is going to be a good scenario for you. We have a head coach that we think is going to really build a good culture for you. But now you can step in and play with a guy who is widely regarded as a good wide receiver and a guy that you have very, very good chemistry with. And I think that's really the big reason. I really like that signing, and it really felt like down the stretch that he wasn't going to be a Steeler at that point just because they had benched him after he went 3-1. Why would you want to go back into that scenario? I mean, you could get into the DK and George Pickens of it all, but I think he wanted to go to a team that was going to give him a shot, and that's going to be the Jets in a situation where you at least have talent and talent that you're familiar with. Again, interesting contract structure, that's for sure. But I think of all the places, this is probably the best place that he could have landed. So it'll be interesting to see if they can hopefully turn him into the guy that Bears fans once thought he was going to. I'm of the belief probably not, but I mean, never say never.
They really think this is going to work out. They threw void years on this contract.
It's ridiculous, dude. But
it's interesting.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then the last one, Daniel Jones signing with the Colts for 1 year, $14 million. Had signed with the Colts because he believes it's going to offer him the best case scenario to at least try to compete for a starting job. So from Daniel Jones' side of it, it makes sense as to why he had taken that money rather than, staying as the backup in Minnesota or something like that. But from the Colts side of it, how do you think this fits in?
I think it's going to be interesting if Daniel Jones outplays Anthony Richardson in a preseason, because then you're going to have to go with your word and say this was a true quarterback battle. I don't know if this is let's get Daniel Jones in the building. We have the money to spend just to get, the fire up the butt for Anthony Richardson to play better, or they really are out on Anthony Richardson, and this is the last straw for Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, the GM, that if they don't get competent quarterback play, they're going to be canned. They're going to be gone. And so it's going to be interesting when your two decisions are Anthony Richardson, who in the last 2 years has played less than a full season. I think he's played 15 games. And Daniel Jones, who, again, like we talked about with Rodgers and the Jets, the Giants actively told him to go away. Like, just please go away. And now you're paying that guy $14 million, and it's mostly guaranteed. So it's going to be interesting. Like, just the whole agree with your Daniel Jones assessment, because I don't think there was any runway for him to start long-term with Minnesota. Maybe he plays 3 weeks. Maybe he, has a Sam Darnold kind of play, but we turn it back to last year, and when Sam Darnold was signed, I don't think anyone really was like, Sam Darnold's going to play 17 games until J.J. McCarthy could not play the entire season. So I think Daniel Jones truly believes he's going to get the opportunity to compete. Let's see if the Colts hold him to that end of the bargain too at this point.
Yeah. No, that's going to be interesting. And there are definitely some Colts fans that have podcasts way bigger than ours that feel some type of way about Anthony Richardson. And that I think he's speaking for a lot of the fans.
I think he's speaking as a fan. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it'll be really, again, I think that's going to be one of the more important QB situations to watch over the course of the next year, because if Daniel Jones does truly beat him out for the job, that is really saying something about Anthony Richardson at that point. No shade to Daniel Jones, but what are we doing here? I mean, if you can't beat out Daniel Jones, then you have bigger issues. So just very interesting stuff. And then there was a whole lot of just other backup signings. Marcus Mariota had stayed with the Commanders, Josh Dobbs to New England, Nick Mullins to Jacksonville, Zach Wilson to Miami, Kyle Trask stays, and then Jacoby Brissett makes his way out to the desert.
I think Mac, right before we started, he signed with the Niners.
The Niners, yeah, he's making more money than
Shanahan finally gets his guy.
Yeah, right. And then we can make our way over to the position that we had seen probably the most money had spent at, and I could be wrong, but I'd be very shocked if I was. That'll be edge. And before we break down and kind of get into some of these signings and whatnot, we'd be remiss to not talk about Myles Garrett and how he had decided to stay. And to give you credit of all the people talking about the Myles Garrett trade and where he's going to go and where he's going to end up, the one person that I think had stayed the most level-headed about it the entire time was you, saying there's no way. And I remember my response was always, how often have we ever, if ever, seen these big players request a trade and not get what they wanted? But I was wrong. If you wanna get into Myles Garrett, again, give you the credit you deserve, because you were right about that.
Yeah, it was easy. It actively costed them money to get rid of him. And with a team that is in a rebuilding process, and frankly, it's a one quarterback draft, and there's a guy at the top that I think is going to be picked number one, you're kind of left like, yeah, we can trade Myles Garrett, we can eat this dead money, we can do all these things because we have a rookie quarterback contract. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe there's not a guy at too good enough to take now, but I think it's simple as this. Myles Garrett, like, the whole thing with, Jimmy Haslam declines his interview, or declines like an in-person, like, talking conference, whatever, however you want to frame it. Jimmy Haslam declined that. And I think a lot of people took that the wrong way. I think what that was is that, listen, Andrew Berry, I give you full responsibility of my checkbook. If you need to write a check to keep this guy around, I will gladly sign it. And I think that's what came over, is that Myles Garrett got $40 million a year, a part of this, to stay. And you look at the Cleveland Browns, and it's hard to trade away the player caliber of Myles Garrett, especially for the Cleveland Browns. For the last 3 decades, how many Hall of Fame talents walked through that door for the Cleveland Browns? One is Joe Thomas, a left tackle. It's hard to sell tickets when you're a bad football team with a just an overall miserable approach, because I think this team is still going to be, they're still dreading it, and they still will be dreading it a year from now, the Deshaun Watson deal. And so I think you need to have a guy like Myles Garrett to kind of still get people in the door, still get people to care a little bit enough that I think this contract makes the most sense, even if he's approaching in his 30s and it's $40 million. He's the highest paid, non-quarterback in the league. Whatever. Who cares? Because that guy's going to be on your football team, and that's really all that matters right now. So,
yeah, exactly. To put it frankly, money talks, right? Again, as you said, to trade him, it was going to actively cost you like $36 million in cap. So it made no sense from the Browns standpoint to trade him. But then from the Myles Garrett standpoint, I know you had talked about wanting to win and going to this team with culture and all of that stuff. But when you are offered $40 million a year, the highest non-quarterback money in the history of the NFL, how could you say no to that? So, yeah, it was fun to see him trade. And that really opens up the door to a further conversation that maybe we can save for another day. But that opens up the door for a Micah Parsons, who is still on the Cowboys but is actively seeking a new contract. Is he going to ask?
Jerry will do what he always does with these star players. He's going to wait till Labor Day weekend. He's going to pay him the highest possible dollar he can, because he's not going to let stars walk out the door. It's just what Jerry always does. It's agonizing for me, because
exactly
this Micah Parsons thing should be done right after year 3, and we're walking into year 5 with him.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It should have been done last year. But how does that affect the Micah conversation? But then also the really big conversation which we had on last week's podcast was Jamar Chase had come out saying, I want to be the highest non-paid quarterback in the history of the NFL. And the Bengals said, yep, we want to be there stride for stride with you. We want to do that. And now, can that be possible? And if it is, I don't know if they can also then go out and do T. Higgins and all that stuff. And that's part of the reason that we're seeing, Trey on the market now at this point. So the whole Myles Garrett stuff really kind of opens up the door for a lot of other stuff here. But then going into the other edges that had signed, the most expensive edge contract that had been signed was Josh Sweat going over to the Cardinals. So it'd be 4 years.
Called it.
Yes, 4 years, $76 million. And we'll kind of go over a couple different edges. That being said, before we get into Josh Sweat and everyone else, all the Bears signings we are going to not touch for right now. We might say like this is the contract and leave it at that. Ryan does really want to talk about these guys and let you guys know how he feels. I'll tell you, yes, he's happy in general about the Bears offseason. But that's what I'll leave it. He really wants to talk about his Bears, so we don't want to steal that from him. But anyways, back to Josh Sweat. Yeah, 4 years, $76 million. That's just over $19 million a year. And to be frank, stacked up to the rest of the edge market is the best edge out there. I don't think it's that bad of a signing. When you look just at the next most expensive edge that had signed it, Chase Young at $17 million, a bit shocking, I guess. I thought it was a good value deal for Gannon and him going back to the desert and back to his DC where he played so well. Your thoughts on that? And then I guess your thoughts on Chase Young as well. 3 years, $51.17 per.
Yeah, I mean, this Cardinals team was in dire need of just bodies on the defense, like the defensive line room, and to get the premier edge, who is still only 28 years old or turning 28 soon enough by week 1, is a major win for them because they had a ton of money to spend, and I think you're approaching that point with Gannon, whereas year 3, it's like, all right, you guys are fun and interesting, but we got to start really knocking on the door, especially with how the Seahawks seemingly are kind of taking a step back, and the Niners maybe taking a step back from at least the Super Bowl contention, so they are more playable in your division. So I think the results are going to be more valued for the Cardinals, and getting a player like Josh Sweat can help you out. And then the Chase Young thing, I thought the Saints got a pretty decent value on Chase Young. I was expecting into the $20 million with him. After the one season he had with the New Orleans Saints. But again, like, reading the tea leaves with Chase Young, I was always kind of adamantly against a $20 million contract. I think they got to find value, and the guy wanted to stay. And so, again, like, to harp on the Saints thing, like, I don't think they're going to change. Do I want them to change? Yes. But I don't think I could. I don't think it's fun for me to come on the podcast every week and just adamantly be like, well, I hate this Saints move because I think they should just blow it up. Well, they're not going to do that. So I have to work with what I got. So, yeah, I think Chase Young was a pretty decent value for what he is. Like, he's 26. The theoretical upside is still there. I think he had a fine season. The only thing with me is that if the injury bug hits in year 1, that's going to suck. Because I have to imagine the contract structure isn't too far up on Chase Young yet, but I have to imagine they have tacked on enough void years for him to have a very cheap cap hit early into the contract. But yeah.
Yes. No. Well, and the Saints moves as a whole was interesting. Again, in an offseason in which everyone was like, "Don't spend money," to try to clear your books of cap. For you to sign him to $17 million a year, and then go out and we'll get into it in a minute when we get to the secondary. But then go out and sign the safety that I wanted. Thank you very much, Matt.
He picked
over
the
$10 million.
Saints over the Eagles and the Titans. Culture.
I think he picked
Kellen Moore culture.
Yeah, that's what it is. To be frank, I think they offered him the most money. Obviously, we have no clue, but we'll get into the secondary. But yeah, the Saints' approach to free agency was a little shocking to me. Again, because I had thought they're going to sit back and let this be the year where they take to try to fix this issue, and obviously that's still the hope, and you can still try to eat some of this cap. But they made more moves than I thought. Cam Jordan, shocker, decided to come back as well. But just a more interesting approach to free agency than I would have thought for them. The third highest paid edge rusher in this class was Deo, going from the Colts to the Bears. 3 years, $48 million. That's $16 million a year. We'll leave it at that, so Ryan can come on and talk about his guy. But then for me, we'll kind of get to the last two guys that I think are worth really talking about, and then maybe we can spend some time shortly after with a couple of the other guys. Was Harold Landry signing 3 years, $14.5 million per, and then DeMarcus Lawrence at the ripe age of almost 33 by week one, signing 3 years, 42 at 14 per. These are two of the, I don't want to say worst contracts, but two of the more head-scratching contracts for me. DeMarcus Lawrence, just because of his age and the fact that you're signing basically a 33-year-old to a 3-year contract at this point. But then Harold Landry, I've kind of come full circle. It's like, I like him. He, maybe had a little bit of an injury bug, but he had 19 and a half sacks over the last 2 years. And then, okay, well, maybe he doesn't get the most pressure. I think he was like the third least pressure percentage in the entire league. But to go out and sign for that much money is really speaking to me. And I wonder how much of Vrabel really has to say about that. And Vrabel being like, this is my guy. I coached him in Tennessee. I loved him in Tennessee. Bring him here. I want one of my guys here. But your thoughts on either signing, both signings, so on.
No, you said it best with Harold Landry. I think the Patriots overall are just trying to build a culture and get players on the field that are competent playing in the NFL, and I think Landry is one of them. Is he a star, a superstar? No, but again, at 14 per, 14 and a half per, it's not, a value signing, but hey, it gets a competent player on the field that you wouldn't have had before. And then DeMarcus Lawrence, no, I agree with you with the DeMarcus Lawrence. Again, like the Seahawks, they've been beefing up the defense. They re-signed Ernest Jones. They now bring in DeMarcus Lawrence. I think in the past they re-signed Leonard Williams. So they are an older defensive built team with Mike McDonald there. So again, I think they just want to be multiple on the defensive end. Get as many bodies in the defensive line room as they possibly can, and they think DeMarcus Lawrence is one of the competent players in this pass rushing group in the free agency. And then lastly, just before we can move on to the next position, I thought we always talk about the mercenary pass rusher. We always talk about that, like who's a guy who's approaching that 30 years old and he's going to get signed for, $12 to $15 million, and all he's got to do is go get the quarterback, go be a pressure machine. Well, Joey Bosa goes to the Bills, and it was almost the Niners. It was almost the Dolphins, but the Bills swooped in and said, oh yeah, we don't have Von Miller anymore. We want Joey Bosa now. So they swoop in and get Joey Bosa. And then the first signing of the entire day on Monday, another mercenary pass rusher, Hassan Reddick, goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at $14 million. So again, I think those teams just trying to do that route. The perfect mercenary pass rusher to me was Chris Long. When Chris Long bounced from the Super Bowl 51 team with the Patriots and then went right to the Eagles, and he was like the same exact player, just this 1 year, let me go get pressures, let me go put pressure on the quarterback and go hit him, and we can make a run at the Super Bowl. And I think both of those teams kind of had that mindset with signing those guys.
Yeah, I mean, those were those two other players that I had vaguely mentioned to. Those were the two big ones. I mean, if you can get the production out of Hassan Reddick that you got out of him from the previous years, the last couple of years he had gotten with the Eagles, and
You're
then
buying low.
with I mean, $14 million for a guy that's going to get you 12, 13 sacks, $1 million per sack. Shoot, sign me up. And then, the same thing with Joey Bosa, man. It seemed from the moment that he had gotten released that it was just going to be a shoo-in for him to go to the Niners. And it was funny because I was at work. I was working a night shift, and I had saw that Joey Bosa had signed a 1 year, $12.5 million. And I just saw the report, and I was like, "Yep, Niners. Let's keep them going." And then I see a text to the Bills. Really? And I was like, "What?" I was like, I didn't even look at the team. I thought for sure it was going to be the Niners. So the fact that the Bills were again able to swoop in and get Joey Bosa was, I mean, good on them. And for me, it's going to be really interesting to see where Vaughn ends up and what that contract for Vaughn is going to be. He's a guy who's gotten 2 big paydays, and is he going to go to a team where he can compete now and try to win another Super Bowl and take a little bit less money? So it'll be interesting. And then heading over to the other defensive line position, defensive tackle, where we saw the biggest contract outside of quarterback getting handed out to Milton Williams. Man,
we knew it was coming, didn't we?
Yes, right. It was 20. We had saw the reports. Well, he's going to sign over, $20 million. And like the Panthers got this guy. It looked like it was going to be 22, 23. 23 was my prediction for him. And it was kind of for the NFL fans that have been around. It was kind of a Frank Gore to the Eagles situation where this guy was reported he's going to sign here, and then kind of within the hour, New England, well, here they are paying him $26 million to come and play here. And as an Eagles fan, I feel like I can talk about this guy really well. I knew he was going to make a good chunk of change, but $26 million is almost ridiculous for me. As a guy who had benefited from being the secondary defensive tackle every step of the way with his time at the Eagles, whether it was with Fletcher Cox or Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis at that point. So he was the beneficiary of not being the person that got double teamed. And it was the same thing that we had seen with another guy who ended up getting signed in Javon Hargraves. He went out, got his big payday because he performed so well with this Eagles, because he wasn't the guy that got double teamed, and it did not work out because he benefited from not having to be that guy. And I'm wondering if we're going to see that same thing. And I would be really shocked if he plays out the full contract at $26 million per because of that. It's shocking to me. And to be frank, I would have liked his fit with the Panthers better, because he would have had another really top-end defensive tackle, another really good running mate in Derek Brown, where he wasn't going to be the primary focus at all times. And now you go to New England, where you are going to be the guy that's going to get double teamed. So good luck. I guess have fun, get your bag. Can't complain about that. But I mean, your thoughts on the Milton Williams signing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he did exactly what Hargraves did. He performed in a contract year, and he got his bag in a big way. And for the Patriots, when you have all the cap space, it's not like this most valuable tool that everyone overrates. Like, oh, look at the Patriots. They have $120 million in cap space. Yeah, what's their biggest need? Receiver. They've only signed Mac Hollins. So it's not like this amazing thing to have cap space. It doesn't fill your needs, but it does give you the opportunity to load up on good players. And I think, overall, just speaking with the Patriots, I think they loaded up on pretty decent players. Like Milton Williams at $26 million is a lot. And overall, I don't love it at that price point. But then again, what's your alternative? Like, they traded Gottschall to the Saints. Christian Barmore, hope he is doing well. He had the blood clots issue. He played a little bit last year. I don't know if that's going to continue. I don't know if that's a long-lasting problem that he's going to have to deal with, and maybe he's not on the field as frequently because of those. I don't know. But just overall, I think it was a lot. But and again, it's like the Patriots have no other avenues to get these good players. So you kind of have to go in there and say, well, we want this player. We could just box you out from a price point standpoint with the Panthers. And that's exactly what they did. Like, it's and then, like, I know I dunked on Jerry earlier. We got to tip the cap to Jerry. I think getting Osa Odigizua before the free agency market and getting him at 4 for $80, and then you see Milton Williams signed for 4 for $104. Tip of the cap to Jerry on that one. I'll give him his props when he needs them.
Yes, no, absolutely. The other quote unquote big money signings were Jonathan Allen to Minnesota. 3 years, 51-17 per, and then good signing for them. I thought it was good, but to kind of skip over that, and we'll get back to that in a second. Arguably the worst signing in all for age. I think it's the second worst. There's an offensive lineman that I think is worse. But
no, this one is way worse to me.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll get into it. Javon Kinlaw, my guy, signing a 3 years, 15 per 45 in total to go to Washington. I remember when that happened, and again, like, congrats to Javon Kinlaw. For those who've known me, I just adore Javon Kinlaw. He is like probably within the top 3 of my favorite prospects I have ever watched coming out of the draft. That's how good I thought this guy was. There were certain points in that draft where I was like, he is going to be better than Derek Brown. And it hasn't really shown out. But for him to sign that big of a contract, being another guy that was able to be the beneficiary of the double team, because you got Quinn Williams there at 15 per, is absolutely ridiculous. And it's not even like he produced this crazy amount when he was at the Jets. At the Niners, he had 3.5 sacks. And then this past year with the Jets, he had 4.5 sacks. So we're really going out and we're going to pay him $15 million per when we could have just kept Jonathan Allen. The thought process there just didn't make any sense to me, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, the only thing I can say from a beneficiary is looking at the way the contract is structured. This is essentially a 2-year contract. They can cut him in year 3 of this contract and save money. So essentially, I'm viewing this as a 2-year contract, and this is just let's get younger, I guess. But then again, I think you're getting less talented while getting younger, which is never a good swap for me. So, I mean, if this takes Johnny Newton off the field, I wouldn't love it. But overall, I guess this is the going rate for interior linemen. I guess this is what your Eagles have done, having these just multiple guys to just be able to provide different skill sets to rush the passer or to stop the run, things like that. But then again, he was signed within 2 hours. So it's not like the value kind of came to him and they were like, well, Milton Williams is getting 26 over there. We got to give Kinlaw 15 just to make sure we get him in the door. No, they signed him very early. So no, I completely agree with you. It's one of the worst values on paper right away for me. Could it work out? Absolutely. Any of these guys could work out. Someone could be Zach Bond, for all we know. But from just a immediate processing in my head, when that happened, I went, there's no effing way this works out.
No, I absolutely agree. Then we see, Grady Jarrett signing 3 years, 34, 11 per. And then what I think might be one of the best deals in all of free agency, especially when you're considering how much other guys are going for at this price at defensive tackle, was Poona Ford, 3 years, 27, just over 9 per. that was, I mean, clap, hands to the Rams there for that one. That he gets to stay in LA. This is a perfect scheme fit for him. I absolutely loved that signing for him. And then the other Rams guy there, Bobby Brown, 3 years, 21, seven per. Those were really the two value signings that had stood out to me from the defensive tackle positions that I really, really liked. Is there anyone else that stands out to you in terms of good value signings?
I think buying low for the Lions on Levi Onwuzurike, he missed most of this past season. Getting him at 5.5 for me was because you look at like Kinlaw getting 3 times his amount just because, well, he was healthy last year. I think Onwuzurike, when he's rushing the passer next to Aleem McNeil, I think he's one of the better just at his price point. Maybe I'm not going to say, one of the best in the league, but at 5.5, I think that is definitely worth the value. And then to harp on your Poona Ford, we're going to talk about the Rams because I want to talk about the Rams. The Rams are just so good at this, man. Again, you look at the way, just from a football nerd like myself, you get all these weird body types, these weird rushing the passer archetypes. Braden Fisk, we have to trade a second to get him. We take Kobe Turner and he hits in the 3rd round. Well, what do we need? Oh, we need a 330-pound space eater like Poona Ford to just drop in here on 1st and 2nd down and then let those guys go get the passer on 3rd and 8. I loved it, man. I loved everything what the Rams did this offseason so far. And so, no, I'm just harping on your point. But again, throughout the whole, I think Sheldon Rankins is still a pretty decent player going back to the Texans at 5 per. I think that was a pretty decent one, but we can move on to the next position.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll kind of save all our superlatives until the end. But yeah, for me, it was the Rams, right? I think they're probably the biggest, one of the biggest winners of anyone thus far. But we'll hop over. We'll stay on the defensive side of the football here, and we'll kind of just lump secondary as a whole here. And we'll start off with the best secondary player on the market at this point, Javon Holland, signing 3 years, 45, 15 per with the Giants. I thought that was a great get for them. I expected him to be upwards of $15 million, especially when we're seeing what the corners are going for, and obviously different position. But for him to be making that much, I thought was an absolute steal, and I loved that signing for the Giants.
Yeah, isn't it ironic that Joe Shane, the year after letting an all-pro safety walk out the door, he immediately high-priced safety in his priority list of signing money this year? I think that guy is just him and Dable are just fighting for jobs right now, and they're just trying to, how do we get any good players with upside in the door? That since we're in the secondary, I'll lump a Debo in here with this. 3 years, $54 million. It's a lot for Paulson Adebo, especially coming off a broken leg, but I think he still has some of the best upside of this free agency class because of the skill set he possesses in the man coverage world, coming from a Dennis Allen scheme. So, yeah, I think the Giants are just in the business of getting good players at modest value, and I think the Debo was a little overpay for me, but the Javon Holland was a rocket-fueled signing for me.
No, I absolutely loved that one, and we'll stick with the safety here. Again, we can kind of go over everywhere in the secondary. The guy that we had kind of referenced to earlier, another, I think, very good deal for what you get. Justin Reed, again, a guy that had really wanted myself after that CJ trade. For those who are unaware, the Eagles traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for
an unplayable right guard.
For a first-round right guard that has not worked out at all, in a fifth-round pick. And I'll get into that now. I guess we'll do that now here. For me, I think it just came to he probably wanted more money and Howard Roseman was very much
He's not on the
of
priority
mindset,
list.
Exactly. We have these core young guys that want to keep together, and to be frank, you're not one of them. Would we rather have you, or would we rather have Jalen Carter? And do we want to spend that money on you, or extending a guy a couple years down the road in Cooper DeJean and in Quignon and stuff? And obviously that's a couple years out. So they made that trade. So the Eagles almost immediately have jumped into that safety market, and I do think there's a safety. They will be targeting the older guy, Justin Simmons, and he had talked about wanting to come there. But if Fangio really thought that this guy was that important to his team, they wouldn't have let him go. But back to Justin Reed, he was a guy that I had really wanted. And when you see the price tag he's going for, 3 years, $31.5 million, 10.5 per, I thought that was a really, really good signing for you guys. And you guys restructured the Honey Badger as well. I think you guys are creating one heck of a safety duo back there for New Orleans.
Yeah, allowing it to be multiple for the new defensive coordinator, Brandon Staley. Again, like, this was the one that kind of, like, it irked me a little bit, the way, like, I saw some people talking about it. Is like, I think this is a value, and this is a good player. We don't have to just rag on the Saints because they spent money again. Like, I think viewing it through the lens all the time of, well, they spent money on a good player, but they should have kept that money just for later. Yes, I agree with you. But at the same time, just completely ignoring the value aspect of it, they work in their own little tier for me. So again, like, I think this just allows them to be multiple in the back end. I think, Staley's going to run a lot of quarters, a lot of cover 2 stuff, and I think these guys are really good at it. And to harp on the Matthew point, he actually did take a pay cut. So he's going to be paid based on playing time this year. So I'm excited about that. If that keeps him on the field, well, you got to earn your money by being on the field. So
yes,
yeah.
And then just kind of rounding it out with the 3 other safeties that had signed, and you can jump in after I say the 3 and talk about whatever you want. Cam Bynum signing 4 years, $60 million. That's 15 per. So the same annual value that Holland went for, or I guess just under by like just the tiniest amount.
Yeah.
But basically the same annual value that Holland went for, and he's finding his way to Indianapolis. Then you have Trevon Moehrig, who signed 3 years, 51, and that's 17 per, so even more than the best safety on the market. And then Fuaga, who ended up signing 3 years, 45, 15 per. And again, the big thing that not to harp on it because we just talked about him, but the fact that Holland is going for the same money that Cam Bynum is going for, the same money that Fuaga is going for, and less money than what Morg is going for, is really quite a steal for the Giants there. But I mean, 3 big safeties hit the market, 3 other big safeties hit the market and really cashed in. Your thoughts on any of those 3 guys?
Yeah, Merrick, I thought he was going to definitely stay with the Raiders. The Raiders did not bring back as many young free agents as I expected. Like, Nate Hobbs in the secondary left. I know we didn't touch on him, but they brought back Malcolm Kuntz. But overall, I thought they would definitely keep one of those guys. Hufanga, the Niners plant going to Denver, both him and Trey Greenlaw go there. That's fascinating. If those guys can stay healthy for a whole season, I mean, those are 2 of the best values for me. And then kind of connecting Cam Bynum to Byron Murphy with the Vikings. The Vikings chose, we have to pick one of you. We can't pay both of you because we're going to allocate the resources towards the interior defensive line and the interior offensive line by the way they spent. They picked the corner, and I still think, like, Cam Bynum going to the Colts with Lou Anarumo, also with Charvarius Ward from the Niners, I think Lou Anarumo's getting good players and intelligent players. I think those are the things that Anarumo values there is intelligent football players. And, it takes a guy like Nick Cross off the field for the Colts with Cam Bynum in there. And I think that's a benefit. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In getting into the corners, we already had touched on Paulson Adebo, but Carlton Davis signed 3 years, 54, $18 million. A guy that you had just mentioned, Chartarius Ward, 3 years, 54, 18, and then Byron Murphy on that same contract, 3 years, 54, 18 million. So 3 guys.
4 different corners got paid the same exact contract.
Yeah,
the guarantees are a little different, but. It was just weird to see it on paper.
Yeah, right. And then and then you get to the nickel guy there in Jordan Lewis, making his way out to Jacksonville, 3 years, $30 million, 10 per, making him the highest paid nickel in all of the NFL.
That was an agent speaking on whoever. I don't know who reported it, if it was Schefter or Rappaport, but that was like drilled into my head. He's the highest paid nickel. And that makes me think that the agent was really drilling that into those messages.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we had saw corners really make some good money while they're out there, and then DJ Reed, can't forget about DJ Reed. They found their Carlton Davis replacement, a guy that's basically the same age. I think he's like a month older than him at this point. 3 years, 48, 16 per. So guys out here on, in the secondary, really, really going and making their money. And then we'll kind of wrap it up very quickly on the defensive side of the ball. With linebackers, not a whole lot of guys to really mention here outside of Dre Greenlaw signing the 3 year, 35, a guy that you had mentioned going from San Fran to Denver. Really shocked he didn't sign a 1 year deal to drive up his value a little bit coming off of that injury there. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of cashes in here. Like, he's going to be a free agent the next time, like he's 31. So I guess this was his biggest payday. I completely agree with you. I thought he was going to go somewhere where he was a 1 year, let's hit the boom. But again, money talks, and there's no guarantees out on it yet. I would want to know the guarantee number. I want to know if that guaranteed number stretches into year 3. But yeah, I think Greenlaw's a great player, and not necessarily a buy low off the torn Achilles. Like, they paid him at proper value, I think. So that he was one of the guys that I kept circling as a buy low for one of these like Super Bowl contending teams where the Broncos swoop in and say, we know how good of a player he is. We're going to get him at the proper value.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think the only other linebacker that's probably worth talking about here, Robert Spillane, heading from the Raiders over to New England, 3 years, 33, easy math there, 11 per. Just thought it was a good signing. I don't know how much more there is to say. I just thought it was a good player, making probably what the market value was, maybe just a little bit over, but just real solid signing for that.
This was one of my favorite signings. Him along with Carlton Davis. These were culture moves for Vrabel's defense to me. Spillane and Carlton Davis, just ass kickers, man. I think that is the environment that Vrabel wants to surround himself with, and he wants the younger guys that we get in here to be surrounded by this leadership. And I think Spillane just embodies that with the Raiders. I mean, he's an older linebacker. He's 29 years old, but I think the things that he provides off the field and his overall play on the field, he just runs around. He's everywhere. And it's so much fun to watch Robert Spillane play football, and for New England to make that signing, even if this is, there's a potential out after 2 years, even if it doesn't go the full, 3 years, whatever. I think this is a culture guy, and this is a guy I want around on my football team, and I loved it for the Patriots.
Yes, absolutely. And then jumping over back to the offensive side of the ball here. The wide receivers, First off, Cooper Kupp has officially been released. I would be very shocked if the Patriots don't make a very big push to get him at this point, with that wide receiver hole being as big as it is. So we'll see where he ends up in the contract value that he gets. But leading into the guys that did sign, Devontae Adams, a guy that had signed on Sunday, he was allowed to do that because he was a guy that was cut/released, so he was able to sign wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted. 2 years, 44. Again, another easy math there, 22 per. Went from the Jets over to the Raiders. Absolutely loved the move. The thought process there, a little confusing why they would move on to, they wouldn't want to pay Cooper Kupp, but then they're going to pay Devontae Adams. That's besides the point. But I do think getting Devontae Adams at only $22 million was amazing. And they're really trying to build and push a little bit further into that contention period until Matt Stafford leaves. And this is another signing that shows that. I absolutely love that signing for them.
No, this was one I shouted out last podcast when we talked about Devontae Adams. This is absolutely the place I wanted to go, because I think he is the thing about Nakua and Kupp for me is they are so identical in their skill sets. It's that we motion you, we get you the ball in space, and you create. Well, Cooper Kupp couldn't stay healthy, and now you get Devontae Adams, who is a press man beater on the outside at the true X position. Like, you look at Devontae Adams, the past season he had with the Jets, in 11 games he had almost 900 yards and 7 touchdowns. So it's, we can look at stats, and he's playing on a meaningless football team, and he had that monster game against Jaguars that kind of inflate it. But overall, I think having a guy that is just going to be in the right spots, like Kupp was, but a different skill set for Stafford, is very valuable to this offense and very valuable to McVay. Again, just harping on what the Rams did, I thought they did a great job. And before we get into it, Chris Godwin also re-signing with the Bucs, 3 years, $66 million. So that one, again, kind of along the same lines. I think the Bucs just keeping their guys, keeping this thing rolling. Like, this is the second year in a row where Mike Evans hits the open market. They re-sign Mike Evans. Chris Godwin hits the open market and takes less money to stay with Tampa Bay. So again, like, this, clearly guys want to be in Tampa Bay and catching the ball from Baker Mayfield.
No, absolutely. I mean, that Chris Godwin signing was arguably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, because the fact that you were able to get him for not a whole lot of money and convince him to stay. Again, the reports were that he left $20 million on the table. A lot of people speculate that that's coming from the Patriots there.
I bet that was another year. That's the way I interpreted it. It was like, it was another year, but it maybe was like we talk about these contracts with the guarantees, like, it was probably a dummy year. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it maybe, yeah.
But I absolutely love that. The fact that we were able to get him for 3 years, 22 per, the same as Devontae Adams, to keep him in the building. One of my favorite signings or re-signings of all of free agency there. And then right after that, you kind of make a bit of a dip. From there, it's Josh Palmer going to the Bills, 3 years, 36-12 per. Same for Slayton, staying in the Giants. But of the more quote-unquote value guys, really the one that I liked the most was De'Ami Brown going to Jacksonville for 1 year, 10 per. I was very shocked that guys like Slayton and Josh Palmer ended up making more money than De'Ami Brown. And I loved that signing for Jacksonville. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I thought De'Ami Brown in that Commanders playoff run, he really made a name for himself again. But just touching on the Palmer thing, I think Palmer is, like, he's 25. I think he's going to be what they wanted out of Amari Cooper. Just juice on the outside. Are you going to be, is at $12 million at 25 years old, 26 when week 1 hits, I think it's going to be a pretty good value because he complements what they do with Shakir and Keon Coleman, who they drafted last year. I think he's just going to be a juice down the field guy that they wanted Cooper to be, but he was too old to do the role. And then the Slayton thing. Well, if we don't re-sign Darius Slayton, Malik Neighbors is going to get killed because he's going to have to catch 200 footballs. So I like the Darius Slayton thing. I was like, really? He's going back to the Giants? And then you start looking at it and you go, yeah, what else were the Giants going to do for whatever quarterback they put in there? But my favorite value was Nick Westbrook-Akine going to the Dolphins at 3.25 per. He is the perfect skill set compared to he's not like Odell was redundant when you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Nick Westbrook-Akine provides he provides the big body and contested catch winner. He had like 10 touchdowns this past season with the Titans. You probably didn't know that unless you rostered him in fantasy for some reason. But yeah, Westbrook-Akine just dropping in another little skill set there was fascinating to me with the Dolphins.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go.
I think this would be wrong if we didn't touch on Hopkins too. Hopkins going to Baltimore is pretty cool. Do I think he's washed? Yes. Is it also cool that he's going to be on the same team with Lamar and Derrick Henry? Absolutely yes.
To be frank, Baltimore is becoming a home for retired, washed-up wide receivers with D-Jax and
it's so
Dez
fascinating.
At one point, OBJ.
Just touching on this before we move on to the next position, like the guys on the open market right now, there's still good receivers out there. I just wonder how these guys kind of land. You look at, Cooper Kupp now hits the open market. Diggs is still out there. Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Deontay Johnson. I don't know if anyone's going to do the Deontay Johnson thing again. Lockett, if he still has some high-level football, and it's just a ton of older guys, in their 30s at receiver, and the league's kind of telling us, like, yeah, we'd rather pay Darius Slayton $12 million a year because, we think we can get an upside from Slayton, where if we sign Diggs for 1 year for 12, this could go wrong, and it doesn't matter. So it's interesting with the guys still out there and not negotiated yet.
Yes. And then jumping over to the last kind of two positions and offensive line. So interior, we'll start with interior because there's a little bit more movement in interior than there was at tackle. We'll start off with the highest per value, which was Aaron Banks, going from San Francisco to Green Bay, 4 years, 77, 19 and a quarter million per, which there were a lot of people shocked by how expensive that contract was. And to that I say, did you not look at free agency last year? Did you guys not just see Robert Hunt going for $20 million per year? Is it a little bit more expensive than what I would have paid for Aaron Banks? Absolutely. And I don't think it's necessarily a very good signing, but it gives Green Bay the ability to continue to fill up the interior of that offensive line and get a guy who's played good football. Again, a little bit more expensive than what some people would have thought. But I think this signing is getting a little bit more heck for it than I expected. And maybe it's because I expected a little bit higher of an average per year. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the only thing that, it just made me think for a minute because Josh Myers, their center, is a free agent. I think he signed away. Who's playing center? Does this mean you're kicking Elgton Jenkins inside the center? Does it make him a cap casualty and you have to find a new center? What does it do with Jordan Morgan, who you drafted in the first round last year, that we all kind of viewed as a guard? Does that mean you're going to kick him out to left tackle now? Because they have a 7th round player in, I think, Rasheed Walker playing there right now. It just makes you think. It just, okay, you're dropping this guy in, not playing amazing football, especially there was a guy clear to the market in Joe Tooney, who your rival got, by the way, that I think slides in way more soundly with the offensive line than Aaron Banks, because Aaron Banks he's a left guard only player at this point in his career. So it's going to be interesting to see what are our five? I don't know if this is LaFleur and Gutekunst kind of going, let's just find our way to get five along the line and we'll figure it out in the training camp. But man, it was a lot of money, and I was shocked to see that money for Aaron Banks come out.
Yes. And then getting to the second most expensive here, and we'll kind of pair this up with another signing here. Will Fries signing a 5-year contract, 88.17 and a half per, going from Indy to Minnesota. And then also Ryan Kelly signing 2 years, 18.9 per, going from Indy to Minnesota. And they have shown the want to build a very good offensive line for whoever's going to be quarterback back there. Obviously, probably JJ, but who knows? Aaron Rodgers. But they dished out good money to try to solidify the interior of that offensive line. Will Fries went for a little bit more than what I would have thought, but he was playing well before he had broke his leg, which kind of fluke. It's not like a big old like injury risk for him. It's not like he was plagued with all these different stuff. It was just a broken leg. And I thought those were two good, interior offensive signings for them.
Yeah, I think this was the entire plan for Minnesota, was how do we just get an influx of talent along the interior of both of our lines. I think that was where this money was going to go. They didn't tag Darnold for this specific reason, because if you tag Darnold and you want to trade him, you got to trade him at the price tag of the franchise tag for the quarterback, which is astronomically more than what he made, and B, that money is fully guaranteed, and it's a fully guaranteed cap hit that you can't spread. So say Minnesota tagged him, they had like $60 million. Well, 50 of that now goes to Sam Darnold, and you can't do anything about it until he's traded. So they clearly valued getting these four guys specifically, and Will Fries and Ryan Kelly being those on the interior offensive line, that they didn't tag Darnold. And I think it's the right decision because, like you said, I think Will Fries was playing good football, and he was the best guard on the market because Trey Smith didn't hit the open market. I wonder what a Trey Smith open market deal would have looked like.
God.
Because, man, that someone would have paid top dollar for that. And then, getting Ryan Kelly, pretty cheap contract, 2 years, $18 million. The guarantees aren't out yet, so I don't know if that's a 1-year buffer, kind of like let's put all the guarantees into 1 year and then we can cut them after one. But overall, I think great value from Minnesota. They really had bullet points on the wall that they wanted to attack, and they attacked it to a T.
Absolutely. And then kind of the last two guys I kind of want to touch on here from the interior group. Drew Dalman signing with the team probably everyone expected him to sign to.
Yeah.
Chicago.
Pretty quickly.
Yes. 3 years, 42.14 per. So it was a lot of fun. And then Kevin Zeitler, who had just signed within the past few hours, 1 year, $9 million. If we're talking about pure talent, probably the best guard or interior guy on the open market. But then you calculate that he's 35 years old and he's not going to actually be getting a whole lot of money, anything long-term because of that age. But this really allows the Titans to create very good pieces for who at this point I expect to be Cam Ward. You have Peter, you have him, you have a guy who you just drafted in the first round last year in J.C. Latham, and really trying to secure up this offensive line for what looks to be the rookie quarterback that they're going to take in this draft this year. And I loved that signing for them.
Yeah, the thing about the Titans O-line now is that it's 5 deep now. I know what the 5 are, and you know the thing about them? they're huge. It's just massive dudes all across the line, and it's clear that we want to, like, we get the freak project at right tackle now. We can kick him over from left tackle. We get Nicolas Petit-Frere off the field, and that was clearly a point made with the Dan Moore signing. We don't want that guy on our football field anymore. But again, like, I think this is we want a healthy environment up front first. The skill positions will come throughout the draft after the number 1 pick is announced. So I personally love what the Titans have done up front, because does it work out? I don't know. Nobody knows, like I said earlier. But the process, I enjoy the process. I think the process is pretty sound from the outside looking in.
Yes, I think the process was sound, and that's a perfect segue to kind of jump over to the last position. Not really covering much on the running back or tight end. There's not really anything big that had happened over there. There's some news like Dallas Goedert, so on and so forth, but not really anything big. So it's the last position group that we're going to really touch on. And the guy who I said was, when I mentioned Kinlaw maybe being the second worst contract, it's because I was referring to the guy that you had just mentioned, in Dan Moore, signing 4 years, 82, 20.5 mil per year. I like the thought process behind shoring up that offensive line, like you said, but I don't know if the process directly leads to results there. Dan Moore should not be making $20.5 million. That's absolutely ridiculous. I think he allowed like 12 sacks this past year. Okay, again, a lot of people.
Let me. I don't want to cut you off, but let me take you into the headspace with what I think the Titans had to deal with making this contract. Stanley's off the board. Alaric Jackson's off the board. Jalen Moore, going from the Niners to the Chiefs, is making $15 million per. You know how many starts Jalen Moore had? 12. Dan Moore, with the Steelers, has started nearly every game he's played. He is what you see is what you get. Like, he's not we can mock the past stuff. Yes, I understand. But it's I am at the point where if you can get functional tackle play, just a floor-setting, fine tackle at this price with a rookie quarterback, there was no other avenue you were going to find it. Because the number 1 pick's going to a quarterback. So it's not like you have a premium pick that you can just, let's drop another, rookie tackle in this mix with J.C. Latham. That's where I'm at with it. I get it. The player's not that good, and the money is a lot. But there's still no contract updates on this. I want to know what that guaranteed money, how that guaranteed money stacks up, because he got 50 of it, 50 of the 82 guaranteed. I want to know if that, again, kind of loaded up early because you're expecting a rookie quarterback contract to come in. But yeah, continue. I just, that's my whole point, is that you got to this is what the market kind of demanded with Dan Moore, because Stanley gets re-signed, Alaric Jackson gets re-signed, Jalen Moore is making $15 million per, is that if you wanted Dan Moore, you're going to have to overspend, because there's no other avenue to get a functional player.
Yeah. To the point of a guy that you had just mentioned there, Ronnie Stanley signing a 3-year, $60 million deal to stay there in Baltimore. Good signing. The thing there that I want to kind of touch on, or I guess harp on, and we see it every free agency, and it just bugs me to no end. I think it was yesterday, reports have come out, some teams were tampering. We'll get into another play after that, who I just remembered. But the tampering, there were other teams like the Patriots and the Commanders who were offering him more money and blah, 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 blah. That just drives me crazy. Of course there's tampering. There's tampering for every single guy. Why do you think these deals are signed within 10 minutes of the tampering window opening? It's not like these guys have no contact with. Yeah, it's not like these guys have a no contact and then within 10 minutes go out and sign new deals with new teams. It drives me crazy. It happens. We see it every position, every year, at all ages of everyone. It's gonna happen. What are we doing? Just leave it alone. Stop it. That also being said, the other tackle that is on the move that kind of caught everyone really off guard, Lermy Tunsil, on the move to the Commanders. They traded a third this year and a second and fourth next year for Lermy Tunsil in a move that I thought was amazing for the Commanders and very head scratching from the Texans. This is a team that had struggled in the Texans keeping your quarterback upright. Why is the fix to trade Lermy Tunsil, one of the premier tackles in the league? It just didn't make any sense to me. And then obviously, they cut Shaq Mason and traded Kenyon Green and whatnot. But the Lermy Tunsil is really the one that I want to touch on. I wonder what their plan is to keep him upright. And for a guy who his only issue was really false starting, why are we trading him? It's been an issue that this guy keeps and getting like hit after hit after hit after hit. And I guess it's just a common theme for the Texans organization in general. I guess just not being able to keep a quarterback upright. And it really ticked me off that they traded that, but good move for the Commanders.
Yeah, I think I spent some time thinking about this when it first happened, because it like when you think of that phone call, who was the first phone call? Was Houston trying to deal Lermy Tunsil, or was it the Commanders trying to beef up the offensive line? And I really believe it could be either way, because I think the Texans' now approach is, I think they're going to try and moneyball this thing. I think they're going to drop a rookie tackle in here, and they're going to try and spend along the margins, maybe break the bank here and there in the next year with Stroud's contract still being cheap. But I think this is just the same way Howie Roseman did it with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Rather than trading next year and expiring Lermy Tunsil after another year of possible decline, I think they're just trying to get ahead of the decline. They're just trying to get ahead of it, send him away at his max value currently, and we can rebuild this in the aggregate, and we can figure out a solution. I think there is a more friendly offensive lineman kind of system coming in with Nick Caley from Bobby Slowik's. So overall, I think it's just they're threading a needle. I'm not going to discount that, trading away your best offensive lineman, but just thinking about it from that point of view, it's just fascinating to view it that way, because it's hard to do. It's interesting because, like you said, he is the best offensive lineman on that, and it's very well easily that Lermy Tunsil bounces back next year, and we still have a top 5 tackle in him. We still have 2 more years under contract with the Commanders. He's still a top 5 tackle. So it's going to be interesting. Did the Commanders buy in right, or did the Texans, strike while the iron's hot and sell at the correct time? We'll see.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of unknown. You have no idea. I mean, no one could have even fathomed the idea that Zach Bond a year ago on a 1 year, $3.5 million contract was going to be an all-pro linebacker. So there's layers to this. But I again, it just goes back to a team that was struggling so desperately along the offensive line to trade their best piece away. Just hurt my soul. And then the other two kind of tackles that I think are worth mentioning here, Jalen Moore, a guy that you had mentioned, the backup left tackle, had only started 12 games, signed 2 years, $30 million to the Chiefs. So hopefully they find their replacement at left tackle, and they're trying to figure out, well, hopefully this guy can do it. You never know. I mean, he was sitting behind Trent Williams, so it makes sense why he didn't get a whole lot of playing time. And then the Patriots going out trying to shore up their offensive line a little bit for Drake May, signing Morgan Moses at the ripe age of 24 to a 3-year contract, 24 and then
34
18 per or 34. Yep. It says 24 for Spotrac.
His age. You said 24.
Oh.
The ripe age of
34,
24.
yes. No, ripe age of 34. Yep. Good catch. The ripe age of 34 years old to a 3-year contract. Again, 24 million, 18 per. I think those are the other two big guys that are worth really mentioning here outside of Dan Moore. But interesting, I think, that the Kansas City Chiefs are going this route with Jalen Moore and hoping that this guy can be the guy. And if he is, awesome. You found your guy for, hopefully the next 4 or 5 years to protect Pat Mahomes. But we'll see. You're signing a guy that does not have a lot of experience underneath his belt.
And the Lions brought back Dan Skipper. I know they love Dan Skipper. In Detroit.
Yes. Your thoughts on any of those?
No, I think it's time we play the superlative game with the free agency, right?
Yes.
I think we gotta
really, really quickly before you do that. Really, the only 2 or 3 big moves that I think are worth mentioning within those other 2 categories. Juwan Johnson just re-upping 3 years, just over 30 at 10 per, and then Evan Ingram 2 years to Denver, 2 years 23, 11.5 per, and then at the running back, really I think the only guy that is worth mentioning at this point is Najee Harris, signing 1 year for $5 million. But if you don't have any thoughts on any of those 3 guys, we can jump into the superlative game.
No, Juwan Johnson, what made me feel better about his contract is that Noah Fant's getting the same exact contract pretty much. I think those guys are like some of the most comparable tight ends across football. So it's not like you overspent on a Juwan Johnson. Yes, he's older than Noah Fant, but their skill set, they're more big slots than they are inline tight ends. And I think if the Saints let Juwan Johnson walk, it leaves like Dallin Holker, who I like as a UDFA, but as the tight end 1, maybe not. So it just fills out the position. And then Sean Payton finally gets his receiving tight end. I think we were all just like waiting for this moment, is that he's going to get one of these guys to work out in the receiving tight end category. So he gets Evan Ingram. Does he still have some juice left? We'll see.
Yes. But yes, we can jump into the superlative game.
All right. What was the best value for you this entire free agency?
Yeah, 2 guys that we had mentioned, and I had brought it up when we had talked about both of them. One Poona Ford, again, for him to be on a 3-year contract making less than $10 million per was very good. And again, he's a guy that, as we had talked about, knows his role and does his role very, very, very well. And again, I think his fit within that Rams defensive line is very, very good. But then the other one, and it was a re-signing, it wasn't a new signing, was Chris Godwin. The fact that you were able to keep him into the building, or keep him in the building when he could have went elsewhere for more money, and he's 29 years old, given he's coming off of an injury, but he's 29-year-old wide receiver only making $22 million a year, who has, in 2022, so just 3 years ago, he had a 104 catch season. And before he had gotten hurt, he was on pace to break 1,000 yards for what would have been the 5th consecutive year in his career. I absolutely love that. And again, the fact that they were able to keep him in the building at just $22 million a year was electric. Absolutely love that for them. But who's your best value?
My best value was actually a corner, Christian Fulton, going to the Chiefs at 2 years, 20 million. I think them finally getting a guy like him that, again, adds the flexibility of being an inside-outside corner, mostly outside corner, but because of his size, I think he could be pushed inside to kind of take over the nickel role that they have open right now. Just overall getting another instinctual, athletic corner in the Spags room, I just expect it to work. And oh, by the way, you steal it from, a division rival. That's also a nice cherry on top. And I think just getting younger. I know they don't play the same positions with Justin Reed, but getting younger in theoretically the same role, being a close to the line of scrimmage player in Christian Fulton, I thought was one of my it is the best value to me of anyone on the board.
To add into the safety guy there. Again, you look at this signing in Javon Holland, you're like, how are you saying a guy that's making $15 million a year, the best value is when you stack up to where he is at his position, one of the best safeties in the entire league, versus the contracts that were handed out to the other safeties. Again, you add Cam Bynum is making the same money that he is. Trayvon Moore, a guy in the same class who's not as good as him, is making more money than he is. I love Xavier McKinney. Xavier McKinney is making $1.5 million more than he is as well. Let me ask you this. Would you rather have McKinney on 16.5 or Javon Holland on 15?
It depends, but Holland, for his flexibility, I think I would value more. Just knowing me, and that's how I value defensive backs. Having that versatility that Holland does, being able to play in the box, where I think McKinney is kind of a straight-up free safety. He is your straight-up center fielder, where I think Holland, you sprinkle him around, and he can make plays all over the field. No, I agree with you on that one, too. Then we have to get it. We don't like being negative. But who is the worst value? I know we kind of mentioned this, but go ahead.
Yes, you would. This is just so clear to me. It has to be Javon Kinlaw. Again, you're paying a dude $15 million a year who has really never at any point in his career been an elite producer. Ridiculous. He's coming off a 4.5 sack season, making $15 million. It's a joke to me. It makes absolutely no sense. And to keep it within this, I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this. And again, this is really rich coming from an Eagles fan. But I did not like that Milton Williams contract either. $26 million a year for a guy that has never proven to be that guy on a defensive line is atrocious. I absolutely love him. He will hold a special place in my heart for his performance that he had put on down the stretch of the playoffs. But $26 million a year from Milton Williams, as an Eagles fan, no thank you. You guys can absolutely take him for that price tag.
No, I agree with you. I think we had conversations before free agency started, is like, whatever that Milton Williams number is, we're all going to just in disgust. And it was even more than I thought. So yeah, I don't want to, I'm not going to take Milton Williams or Javon Kinlaw because I agree with those, but I'm going to go to the offensive side of the ball. I think the Aaron Banks deal. I really do. Making a marginal, maybe marginal upgrade at the price that you paid. Can you guess where Aaron Banks is in total, average per year of the left guards in football?
Honestly, considering that Hunt went out and signed the $20 million a year, 2 or 3.
If I throw in both guard positions, he's a little lower on the list. But in terms of pure left guard, he is only behind Quentin Nelson and your guy Landon Dickerson per year value. So that one to me is just, especially because Tooney was out there available. I know it's a 4th-round pick. You don't want to give up picks, but still, I think he's a better player. I think he's a better foundational piece for an offensive line. There's more versatility with him. The Aaron Banks, it's a huge number, and I know there's an out after the first 2 years, but still, just overall, at that number, I can't get on board with it, because I think you're just creating roster shuffle along that line, and I don't like doing that. I thought that was a pretty good offensive line this year, so no. Let's get into the teams. Was there a team for you that really stuck out as winning the free agency period? I know we're is it your Eagles?
What?
Is it your Eagles? Their monster signing they made?
No. In terms of and I had cut out a little bit there. Was your question the best like free agency class per team?
Yeah.
Yes. To me, there's only 2 correct answers, and I predict that one of these teams will be yours. One is the Rams, and I'll let you talk about the Rams, and if you don't, I can go into bigger detail with that one. But for me, it was the Vikings. To be honest with you, again, they had went into free agency and said we want to build on the interior of both sides of the line. And they went out. They signed Jonathan Allen. They signed Javon Hargraves. They signed Will Fries. They signed Ryan Kelly. They were able to retain Byron Murphy. They were able to keep Aaron Jones on 2 years, $20 million, which wasn't bad. And they were able to get Isaiah Rodgers. Some people have mixed opinions on that deal, but 2 years, $15 million. A guy 2.5 years ago was one of the better corners in all of the NFL and was able to really step in at times to the Eagles when Darius Slay was hurt. But again, they went into free agency with a plan, trying to shore up the interior on both sides of the ball. And I think they accomplished that at a very, very high level. So it'd be the Vikings for me.
Yeah, I thank you for leaving the Rams for me, because it is absolutely the Rams. I think the Rams knocked it out of the park. What you're supposed to do in free agency for me is you're supposed to shore up your holes and get multiple on both sides of the ball. And I think their main signings, like if I even lump in, because I think the whole offseason period, I think we lump in everything, even from the combine. Keeping Stafford, keeping a proven quarterback in the conference, re-signing Alaric Jackson, who's an ascending tackle at 19 per, where you just saw a guy who is worse in Dan Moore get more money. And then you go out and you get a bona fide stud receiver in Devontae Adams, and then like I said earlier, what do we need on defense? We need a space eater along the defensive line. Well, let's go get the best one in Poona Ford. I think the Rams, they knocked it out of the park for me. I think there's still ways to go. I think they still got to get some, they're not perfect. They still need to get some, linebacker signings here and there and figure out the rest of the holes of the roster. But so far, I think with the money they have spent, I think they have spent as well as anybody in the league. And so we get from, like we did earlier, we go from good to bad. Was there a team that was just underwhelming in the free agency class for you?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a team that maybe some people aren't talking about. A lot of people want to say the Eagles, but the Eagles went in with a plan. They said they were going to be patient, and they are patient. What are we doing knocking the team? We knew they weren't going to keep these guys. For me, it's the Seahawks. They really haven't signed anyone worth anything other than Ernest Jones. and they have lost big pieces. Again, they got worse at the quarterback position, and we had talked about our thoughts on that. But they had gotten worse at the quarterback position, let DK go. Well, they traded DK, and Tyler Lockett's out. And so they lost 3 big pieces while not really adding anything to their actual roster. They haven't done anything. Honestly, I was going to say they're not a needle mover for me, but they are in the worst direction possible. I think they have just gotten worse, and that's not what you want to hear from a team heading into free agency. Who's yours?
I have multiple. I kind of have one cop out. I think the Bengals is kind of my cop out because I'm kind of just factoring. I like some of their moves they make, like, getting TJ Slayton, bringing back Joseph Asai, things like that. Little marginal moves, like they're kind of setting up the extensions, but like these extensions got to be done sooner or later for me. And if they don't get done by the draft, it's gonna leave another rocky offseason with this team. And so the Bengals are kind of my number one. My number two, a little sneaky one. I'm not buying the Washington hype because of what I just saw last year with the Houston Texans. The Texans go out, they trade the second-round pick, they go and get Stephon Diggs. It all looks great. It all, we're just reloading. We're trying to maximize the rookie quarterback contract. It is so easy for this team to get sucked into these names, Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, and trading all this capital that you don't have avenues for cheap contracts later down the road. So right now, with the signings they've made, like nothing is, the Deebo thing and the Tunsil thing are kind of, needle moving in a sense. You get better along the offensive side of the ball, but overall the rest of them are just like, these are just marginal moves besides the Javon Kinlaw, like Mariota, Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise, Will Harris from My Saints, paying him at a real deal contract now. And then like even smaller things than that. But so I'm just not drinking the Kool-Aid too quickly on Washington. I think they could still be a great team, but I think teams fall into this trap where they overachieve in that first year and they go, we got to hit it hard. We got to hit this offseason as hard as we can to really maximize this and maximize this rookie quarterback contract because we have one of the guys that sometimes it's like, slow down a little bit. You could be punched right back down to earth next week. This team could all of a sudden be 10-7, the 7 seed, and they're losing in the first round with all these additions. So it's just going to be interesting with how the Commanders shake out. But they're a sneaky loser to me because of past history with these. But let's play one more. And then we send it out of here. I have 5 players that are still free agents. I want you to predict where they go. You want to do that?
Yes.
All right. Number 1, easy. Number 1 and number 2 are kind of lumped together. Let's do Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson.
You see, you say easy. It was funny because that picture of Aaron Rodgers had surfaced today of him walking on the beach in his blanket with his headphones on. Teams have actively shown the desire to not want to sign this guy. I think it would be really fun for him to go to Minnesota. Ultimately, I think he ends up with the Steelers, though. I think he's a guy that is, again, looking for the ability to compete now and play at least, on the last few years of his NFL career. I think the Steelers offer that for him. So I'm gonna go with the Steelers for him. And then for Russ to be that one's hard. Just in terms of
the Browns.
Yeah, he is meeting with the Browns, which is very interesting. For me, it might come down to the Giants saying we just need to find someone, because as it looks right now, Cam Ward will not be there when they pick. And if you want to reach on Shedeur if he even makes it to 3. Be my guest. But they are in a very QB needy situation right now. So I'm going to say he makes his way out there to the Meadowlands and is a Giant. But Titans could be a sneaky team.
Okay. I like the sneakiness. I want to think with my heart so bad on the Rodgers thing. I wanted to be a Viking so bad. Just from the whole
fun.
Just the completing the trifecta from the Favre, the ghost before him. Just I think it's too fun of a storyline to not divulge into. But I do agree with you. I think he's gonna go to the Steelers. I think Tomlin whips him into shape and hey, let's go 10-7 again. Let's go be the 5 seed or 6 seed or whatever again, and then you can send out on your note after losing 38-3 in the playoffs with us. And then Russ, as much as I want to say doesn't matter, I don't Russell Wilson doesn't change anyone's trajectory, but he is one of there's still quarterback seats at the table, like the Browns, like the Giants. I think the Giants are in a more desperate mode for him than the Browns currently, especially if they lose out on Rodgers. Like the Giants have exacerbated all their plans. Like plan A was, let's get the number 1 pick. Drew Lock ruins that. Plan B was, let's go get Stafford. Stafford declines that. And now we're on plan Z right now with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson being discussed. Like whoever doesn't want to play with the Steelers is going to go there. But yeah, I think I agree with you on both of those. Next, I think Cooper Kupp, he was released today. I think Cooper Kupp deserves to be mentioned. I think he's still got something left in there. Where's Cooper Kupp playing?
Absolutely. It's going to be the cop-out answer, but it has to be the Patriots, right? They still have such a big hole on their roster at wide receiver. And again, it looked like maybe they were going to be in on a guy like Chris Godwin, and, they at least tried to make a push. And maybe they were going to be in on a guy like DK. And, maybe T. Higgins is still an option, but you're really risking a lot to bank on it being T. Higgins. I think they're going to open up the checkbook, and I think he's going to make his way out to New England. And if not New England, another sneaky team I think could be the Cowboys.
Oh, you took my thunder. I think he's going to the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are going to bring him in. They're finally going to spend on a free agent because he wants to be there and he complements what CD does really well. And I think Dak loves throwing the seam balls and Cooper Kupp loves running down the seam. So I do believe the Cowboys is where Cooper Kupp is going to play. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Again, recently released Von Miller, if he's playing. Where's Von Miller playing?
If he is playing, he will be playing on a cheap deal in Philadelphia. He wants to be with Vic, and as I said, I think he's at the stage where he has been paid, and he's like, let me go somewhere that I can compete. And Philadelphia offers that for him. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if Vic hasn't brought in any of his guys from his days in Denver. And now he has the opportunity to do that with Vaughn. And again, maybe $10 million, something like that. And I say cheap, but I mean, for an edge rusher market right now, the cheap side, I think he makes, his way out to Philadelphia.
I love it. You're making me think. I don't hate it. I definitely don't hate it. I'm gonna say the Chargers. I think we talked about this last week, how Khalil Mack was gonna go to Buffalo. I think we're getting the reverse. I think Von Miller's going to the Chargers to team up with Khalil Mack and create the menacing 2017 duo once again. I think that would be fun. And then the last one. I think just because the market is interesting with this position, it's not a flashy name or anything, but Cam Robinson. Where does Cam Robinson fall into this? Like, the Jaguars actively get rid of him at the deadline. There's no position for him with Minnesota because Darrisaw's going to come back and they have Brian O'Neill. It's just fascinating that Cam Robinson is still sitting out there with his high flashes compared to a guy like Dan Moore. Where do you think Cam Robinson's going?
Oh, that one is tough. There were two spots that I really would have liked to see him end up, and that was the Commanders or the Titans, right? And both of those guys have shown, both those teams have made a, their moves at tackle. It's quite the thinker. If you have a team in mind, I mean, feel free to let me know, and I can maybe sit on this and think about it just a little bit longer.
I think they got one more big spend in them. I think New England. I think they're in such dire need for it. And I know they signed Morgan Moses at 34 years old. I just think they need someone theoretically before, you just drop the 4th overall pick if that's what you want to do. I just think a 1-year flyer, 2-year, 2-year with the option to cut after 1 year with Cam Robinson, that can't hurt the Patriots. Like, they still have a ton of money to shell out. That I don't think this is, market breaking, and it gets you a tackle who can play in a pinch. But that's the team I immediately thought of, just because they have addressed it, but Morgan Moses has never played left tackle. He's a right tackle. So it's just fascinating.
How about the Steelers? I mean, they just lost Dan Moore, in free agency. So, I mean, that hole actively needs to get filled. And given they've drafted guys both the last 2 years to play tackle, but still a hole. It hasn't really worked out as well as they would have hoped for it to work out. And, I think if his price gets low enough, I think the Steelers would be a real fun team to see him go.
Okay. I like it.
You know what? And I don't know what the situation is. Again, they had went out and they had spent already a lot of resources into this offensive line. They're in a good position to draft an offensive line wherever they pick. But how about that team picking there at 10? The Bears. I mean, there's still a lot of question marks if Braxton Jones is that guy as well. And again, I would be shocked, but I wouldn't be surprised. So again, if his market gets low enough, I could see polls saying, well, let's go and have a competition between these two guys in training camp. Say we'll address the tackle, at next year's draft or later in the draft, and let these two guys compete and see who ends up playing tackle there.
All right. That's all 5 of my guys.
There you go. It's a lot of fun. Really quickly, Amari Cooper. I think he's a Cowboy. I wouldn't be shocked if Jerry's like, I'm sorry, we let you walk out. We got to go back. Come back and play for us.
Oh man. Can I just for any of these guys, Chiefs? It's just what if they just get another guy in the door, figure it out, hopefully. Hopkins is gone. Fill that role. I was going to say Marquise Brown got brought back, but I think those roles don't overlap enough that Marquise Brown stops me from signing Amari Cooper. But no, yeah, I'll say Chiefs.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for the 35 people that have made it an hour and 50 minutes into the podcast. We greatly appreciate your guys' support here as we continue to try to grow. That being said, we'd like to thank our sponsors in Uppercuts Grooming, Regional Radio Sports, and Spotify for podcasters. And just make sure you guys tune into next week's episode. We're going to round out the offensive side of the ball for scouting. At this point, you guys should probably be able to piece it together, but I'm still going to leave that as a surprise for you. But any closing thoughts for you, Matt?
No, I'm excited for next week. Really hope Ryan gets the stuff figured out with his technical difficulties. I know that was a problem for him today, but no, overall, I'll say this for Ryan. I think the Bears did a pretty good job in free agency, and they can hang the banner once again for offseason champions under Ryan Poles.
There you go. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you.